Okay, I would like to welcome you to the Accreditation Board Policy Review Committee meeting. And I will ask if we have any public comment on agenda items. Any public comment?
No such comment.
Okay, good. We have no comments. Well, first, I want to publicly welcome our new student trustee. I
Yay,
hope this is going to be a good meeting for you. I'm sure you will learn a lot today. And of course, Linda and Erica and all the goodies. It's good to see you all. Maybe someday we'll be able to have lunch.
Wouldn't that be nice? That would be so nice.
Just some lunch would be good. Just coffee, whatever. Anyhow, so we are going to call this meeting to order.
Okay.
And
Ruh-roh.
What happened?
Berlinda froze.
You might have a lag on our computer here.
Okay.
I just have to say my internet has been going up and down for the last week. I think I have to change my router. So if I lose you, I might have to log back in.
Okay.
Erica, you might send a text to Berlinda to let her know that she's frozen. She might have to
Okay.
call.
Linda, what company do you have at home for internet?
So I have Spectrum as my ISP, but I changed my router about 4 years ago, and I think I need to redo it because I need to re-establish it. I have a mesh network set up, but it's 4 or 5 years old, so you should refresh it every 4 or 5 years.
She must know. I think she got out and she's getting back in. Okay. What's a mesh network?
You have sort of booster spots that connect back into your router. So because I have a Spanish style house, it has really, really thick walls. So I actually have to establish 2 or 3 different access points throughout the house.
Huh. Yeah, I have an extender. I have a Wi-Fi extender so that if I'm sitting out by the pool, I can get the Wi-Fi.
Yeah. So that's, nowadays it's just critical. My husband actually has we have his directly connected to a separate router, so he almost never loses connection, but I don't. I always use Wi-Fi. So now they've changed the Wi-Fi standard, so it's actually a new standard that's coming out for all of the mobile devices. So I probably need to do that because I keep getting kicked off of my meetings like every couple of times during the meeting.
Yeah, I just texted her to see if she's trying to log back in.
Cool.
So Linda.
Yeah. Antonio.
Marianne Letts is going to run for Citrus College.
I know. They are, they're losing a bunch of trustees.
Yeah, JoJo, she's retiring.
Yeah, so they're going to lose, I think, 3 trustees. That's
Wow.
a lot they only have 5 trustees, so that's a big turnover, right? So Tony, I didn't see you on the webinar yesterday. We had an international expert on how to conduct the virtual, how to live in this virtual world. Anyway, people thought it was really good. We didn't have a big turnout. It was too bad.
I thought it was really good.
Oh, good, Erica. I'm really glad that you felt that.
Yeah, I thought there were some really, in fact, I shared a couple of the examples with the management team this morning during our meeting. I love that example about the kitchen table.
Yeah.
About people changing chairs to eat their meal so they're not eating and working in exactly the same place. That was a great example.
Yeah, he's really good. He's an international speaker, and so we were lucky to get him. And I guess when ACCA got him, when he went and spoke to them, there were like 400 people on that webinar. So they were really excited to hear him. I wish more people had done it. Did you do the CEO Academy? I know a bunch of CEOs were at the Academy.
Oh. No, I'm in my,
Okay.
I'm going to enter my 7th year as a president in a month, and I've done so much training. I do not need to go to the CEO Academy. Oh my God.
Old after a while.
So, Larry, I just came off of another meeting. Larry interestingly asked Pam and Adrian if they want to get together, and he thinks, so that the league can be more proactive on the DEI, and some of our strategic priorities. And so one of the things we just told Adrian, because we've had so much difficulty getting critical topics onto the workshops. It seems to be controlled by a group that just kind of does things the same way, much as they're doing in the CEO. So we really pressed Adrian to make a point that we need to really start controlling some of this and bringing in a perspective, sun shining, the things that are important to us that are coming up that are relevant, and not keep repeating the same things with the same old people. So you might want to do the same thing with Pam.
I'm back. I'm back. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
we can.
Sorry
Hey,
about
moving
that.
around.
This happens mostly every day. I hate it. Anyhow, I'm not sure where I got frozen out. I called the meeting to order, and
Yep.
I think I had turned it over to Crystal, right, Crystal? Or you didn't hear that part? So we will start reviewing our policies, and I trust we all have had a chance to look them over. So we'll have a very constructive meeting. Thank you. Crystal, it's on you.
Okay, let's start with 2170. I'll try to pop that up here, which is representation by shared governance groups. This only has one slight adjustment to it, and that is adding the word regular in front of meetings. You usually don't provide a designated space for the shared governance representatives at special meetings or emergency meetings.
Okay.
Looks good to me.
Yeah.
Any questions? Anyone have a question? If not, we'll go to the next one.
Okay, so the next one will be officers. This change was really just to adjust some of the names and part of your regular review process. I'm assuming you do this a lot, fix names, or positions really. So that's what this is. Just changing it, I believe, to the Assistant Superintendent Vice President for Business and College Services.
And that was the only change.
Yeah, it was just a name change.
Okay. Next.
Okay, your next one is committees on the board, which is Board Bylaw 2220.
May I ask one question?
Sure.
Was the student trustee provided a package?
It was in the calendar invite.
So he did get one.
Yes.
I got one.
Okay, just wanted to be sure. Go ahead.
Crystal, Carrie, can you read off the number that you're talking
Sure.
about?
This is Board Bylaw 2220, Committees of the Board.
Okay, got
This
it.
is part of your 6-year review process, and there are no changes to this one unless you want to make changes, but I'm not recommending any.
Thank you, Crystal. Any questions? Okay, we'll go to the other one.
Okay, the next one is 2315, closed sessions. Pop that up here if I can find it. There we go.
Any questions? For the student trustee, you're aware that you are not allowed to participate in closed session. Do you have any questions about this?
I don't.
There are no changes to this, or I'm not recommending any changes. This is just part of your 6-year review process.
Okay.
Okay, good. We'll go on to the next one, which is 2320, special and emergency meetings. Pull that up.
Okay.
It's coming.
Oh, and I see, so it has email.
Yes, I just made the adjustment in this one to get away from facsimile transmissions. Those are not very common anymore, and that we notify by email. I also noted down below that an agenda for a special meeting must also be posted on the college website, not just at the college. So I was more specific about where we post it. Those are my recommended adjustments.
Okay,
Good?
yes.
All right. The next
So
one, we're
I just have one like small question. Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but under where it says under for purposes for this policy, emergency situation means any of the following, and where it says letter C is notification of the emergency meeting. Does that mean to say that notifying of an emergency of the meeting qualifies as an emergency situation, or should that be changed?
Emergency work stoppage.
So, getting back to your question,
I guess what I mean to say is notification of the emergency meeting itself considered an emergency situation?
I think I understand what you're saying, David, and I think that's a very good question. I think that probably just needs to be a separate paragraph.
Yeah.
Because it's not technically an emergency meeting to notify of an emergency.
Can I say somebody has something on in the background? Okay.
So I could do this. How's that? And I'll clean that up before
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that looks less confusing, I guess.
Yeah, that makes more sense. Good point, dude.
Thank you, and I'll clean that up before it goes to the full board. Clearly got some weird.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I probably will bold that so I know what you're doing. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good job, David. Thank you for reading that. The next one we're going on to are a set of new policies. And the first one is 3518, child abuse reporting.
And this is just standard, we need this.
Correct.
This is 3518. Is that
Yes.
Yes.
So it's very short, but it just basically is saying that we need to have some sort of procedure in place for reporting by employees of child abuse.
okay?
Next is the next one we're looking at is 3520, which is local law enforcement. Little
So-
longer.
So the only question I have is, so this talks about the agreements with our local law enforcement coming onto campus. So are they, I assume they are under the same guidelines that we just implemented for our own police force? Yes, no, or?
Well,
Does
we
it
don't
matter?
have the ability. So basically what this does is it means every entity that has its own police force has to have this kind of policy that says other agencies can come and help out when there's an emergency. But we can't control what Pasadena City Police has in their manual. We certainly can talk to them about it. But what this means, and this is really important to us because our police officers are not armed. So we need to give them the permission to come onto campus in the event that we have like a mass shooting or something that requires a level of force that we don't have.
Okay.
I mean, I see your point, and I think it's worthy. I'll make a note of it. And as we're going through our review of the police operations manual, I'll make sure that we make that connection with Pasadena City Police, and make sure that they understand what our policies are. My hunch is, in light of everything going on, they're probably going to do the same thing, but we will at least have that conversation, because obviously we don't want another entity coming onto our campus doing things that we don't agree with. But we do need to have them on our campus because our police don't carry guns. So let's see if we can make sure we get that, that we have a parallel agreement about that. So I'll make a note of it.
Thanks, Erica. I appreciate it. So I assume then this means we are not, so this is an agreement not just with Pasadena, but because we're in Rosemead, it would be Rosemead also, and Temple City.
I believe so, but I will double check that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Unless, Crystal, do you know otherwise? Because I don't know off the top of my head.
You know what? I would have to talk to Dr. Bush about it. He wrote this up
Okay.
for me.
I'll review it with Mike when he's back.
Yeah, that'd be great, because our district does touch on several other entities, including the Temple City Sheriff's Office. So,
Right.
okay, great. Thank you.
The next one we're going to look at is 3560 alcoholic beverages. I'm just going to let Erica talk about this one because she likes this one.
What about 3530 weapons on campus?
Sorry, I didn't do it. Let me bring that one up. 3530. Sorry, very short. Basically, this one is just saying that we prohibit weapons on campus.
So I know at one point we were talking about arming our police force.
Uh-huh.
So is that still under consideration?
So I think that's going to be part of the conversation. You know, I think we have to talk about what our approach to policing is before we introduce that. So it is ultimately a goal to be able for our police to have weapons so that our campus can be appropriately defended. But I do think right now we have to be sensitive to everything. And I think we need to get a level of comfort with the college community and the students about how we roll out policing, and then circle back to this.
Yeah, and tying back into, I think, the message we're getting from the chancellor's office to even change how we, our curriculum
Yes.
for the police officers. So yeah,
Right.
okay, great.
Absolutely. Yeah, so this is a longer term conversation. If I had to guess, I think what we will wind up doing is a graduated approach, meaning we'll introduce tasers first before we introduce guns.
Yeah, makes sense.
I don't believe this policy prohibits us from arming our officers. It just puts into perspective who can carry guns under what conditions.
Okay, great.
Okay, so the next one, alcoholic beverages on campus. The reason that this is on there is that the board has to have a policy that would allow for alcoholic beverages to be served and the instances in which it's allowed. And as you see here, the idea is that it would really be used by the foundation so that the foundation could actually bring our donors to campus, have events on our campus that involve, you know, wine and cheese and whatever. Not only does it save the foundation from having to rent out the Annandale Country Club or the Athenaeum, you know, those kinds of things when they do fundraisers, but it also helps get donors physically to our campus. And that's always a good thing because it helps for them to see exactly what they're supporting. The other thing is that as we build out our culinary program, part of a culinary curriculum includes serving wine. and doing, a wine pairing. And we're also looking at a microbrewery program. And in order to do either one of those, there has to be alcoholic beverage policies. A subsequent AP, once we have that going on, would illustrate or would talk about the instances under which and how much a student could do. For example, when I was over the culinary program at Santa Barbara City College, they had same policy. The foundation was able to sponsor events where alcohol was served. The college could not sponsor the events. It was only when the foundation was doing it. And the other way was when we had a gourmet dining room that was open on Thursday and Friday nights so that students had an opportunity to learn fine dining. And so what we did was a fixed price meal for 4 courses, and each of the courses had a 2-ounce pour of wine that was paired with the food. So in that case, the students are serving alcohol, but it's part of their educational program. And then when the foundation had events, they would hire the culinary students as like internships so that they could serve the alcohol at foundation events, assuming they were 21. The 21 years old does not pertain when you're an educational institution, but it does if you get hired to serve it at a private event. But again, those are the things that would get worked out in an AP once we have that program and curriculum in place. This policy just allows the foundation to hold an event where they serve alcohol.
I think this is a good policy, Erica. And we've had some problems the past few years with the foundation who wanted to hold various events and without it. So
yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. So, so one other question, I know that sometimes the student clubs have wanted to do something, and have alcoholic beverages and it was prohibited. So that would not be allowed at all. Okay.
That would not be allowed. Mostly because there are rarely student clubs that are only open to individuals who are over the age of 21. And so it would, that's where we would get into trouble. Now, if a student club went to the foundation and there was something that was appropriate and the foundation was willing to sponsor it, maybe. But the idea here is not that student clubs will suddenly have a beer bust.
Okay, all right.
So what is the current policy, or do we not have one? What is the?
We don't have one. There is none. Right, there is none, which is why when the foundation has wanted to have an event on campus, they couldn't because you don't have a policy that would allow for it.
Really?
This just allows it. Only the board can authorize the alcoholic beverages on a campus. And as you see here, it must be for a specific purpose.
So just to be clear, this will be the first alcoholic beverage policy for the college?
Yes.
Because that's not what I heard. So I remember previously maybe it was just people talking, but when we tried to do an event, and they told us it was the policy that the college does not have alcohol. So where did that come from?
It was the policy that there was no policy.
How you say?
In the absence of a policy that says it can happen, it can't happen.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Carry on.
Yeah.
Okay, the next two kind of go hand in hand. It's 7110, which is delegation of authority employment, and 7350, delegation of authority resignations. And let me pull up the first one, which is employment. And Erica, I think you know why we're doing these.
So the reason that we're doing this is sometimes we have identified somebody to start working, and it's like the day after the board just met. So what this policy allows is that somebody can start working before the next board meeting. Because basically, and it's on my recommendation, the goal is not to have this happen all the time, but there are instances where we could have an employee start, but we can't because you all haven't met or it's out of alignment with the meeting. This would just allow somebody to start before the next board meeting. You would still confirm this person's employment at the subsequent board meeting, but it allows them to start at least.
Okay.
And then similarly, basically what this does is it delegates the authority of accepting a resignation to me. Again, ultimately, you are all going to formally take action on somebody resigning. But what this means is once somebody has has sent in their resignation and we have accepted it, I have accepted it, it is a resignation. And the reason this is important is because we've had some people, for lack of a better term, play some games around file a resignation and then say, oh no, I didn't really mean it. I was just mad, or I didn't mean it. I'm going to take that back. And this basically cuts down on that by saying, once you filed your resignation and it's been accepted by me or my designee, being the Vice President of Human Resources, you have officially resigned. It doesn't necessarily wait until the next board meeting.
So I have a question. Does this also apply to positions where promotional positions? So they will start in a promotional position before it goes before board action?
Not necessarily.
But it could. Does this open the door to that?
I think so. What do you think, Crystal? I think so.
I think you're referring to the previous one, which is the delegation of authority and employment. Because I believe, let me pull that one back up, because there is language in there that talks about job responsibilities, where to authorize employment, fix job responsibilities, and perform other personnel actions, provided that they all federal and state laws and regulations. I think that's what you're talking about. Yes. I do believe that would the terminology fixed job responsibilities might come under that, but I think it's more likely that what Erica would be doing is adjusting a job description that's out of date.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason is I can think of some instances where someone may be up for promotion, someone, maybe a group disagrees or whatever and wants to protest it, but it just seems awkward that someone then is promoted and given that responsibility, and then if for some reason the board doesn't approve it, then it gets rescinded. I think it's less likely to happen on a new employee, and it's like, okay, we understand they're coming from out of state or whatever, they're losing their job. They don't want a gap in their history, in their employment. The board doesn't meet soon enough. I can understand the resignations. I'm just a little concerned about promotional opportunities.
Well, I think in some ways that calls into question the idea that the board would decide not to promote someone simply because a group of people objected.
Well, there have been some pretty compelling reasons, I think, that have come up in the past.
It's the other thing you could do is you could not forward this to the full board and choose to have a conversation about it. I mean, I feel like this is something that you and your fellow board members then should talk about if you feel like that's a significant enough concern.
So, all right, so let me put it to Berlinda and Tony. So you know that there have been times when there have been questions about either promotions. I don't know necessarily about new employees, but sometimes promotions, and there have been questions, and we've asked some questions and they've had to pull it back. So I don't know, what do you guys think?
I think that's something we should discuss as a board, because you're right. I have seen it before.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that it will be very often, but the chances are there and has happened. So I guess to keep things, we should all talk about it. I agree with you.
So maybe pull that one off.
Yeah.
Well, how would you like to go about talking about it? Would you want to bring this into a closed session, or?
Yeah, we could, Berlinda. It's up
Closed
to you.
session would be the appropriate place, yes.
So we could not move it to the full board and ask you to take it to a closed session for conversation.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be great.
that-
Yeah, that'd be great. We could do that.
It's just this one, delegation of authority. It's not the one on resignations, correct?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the one on resignations. I can't think of an instance where we've pulled back somebody's resignation, but as Erica said, I can think of instances where before the board has met, someone then has rescinded their resignation. So,
Well, we have a couple of, so one example is we had somebody who filed some paperwork, a faculty member who filed paperwork that they were going to resign. And so we started the process of actually we're going to fill that position because it was in keeping with what was happening with our faculty hiring. And then in the 11th hour, the person withdrew her resignation.
right. Yeah,
So
I can think of that.
gone down a path, and it just and in another instance, somebody used it as a threat. Like, if you don't do what I want, I'm going to resign. Then they filed their paperwork and then they took it back. And so it's really just to cut down on any game playing, just for lack of a term.
Well, let's just pull both of them and we will talk about it in closed session, and then we'll bring it back to you.
So you want to talk about both
Both.
resignations?
Let's do
and-
both.
So
Yeah,
you want
let's
to have them both?
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
Okay.
And
And then
before we proceed, hopefully I don't get freezed up again. If you would be kind enough and go back to policy 3518, I think I was out of commission. 3518 is child abuse reporting.
correct?
Do we currently have a policy on that?
We do not.
We do not have
the
a
problem.
policy?
But
Seriously?
we're required to.
Pardon me?
Officially.
I-
We do not, we are legally required to have one. We have some processes in HR that talk about it, but we do not have an official board policy on it, and we need one.
So what exactly would this policy say? Because it is talking here that Dr. Andrew Jones will develop a process, a procedure, blah, blah, blah. But I do not understand exactly what is this policy saying.
Well, the AP for this will basically talk about the responsibility of people who work in our child care center, people who work in any sort of internship with small kids. We do, under California state law, we have a duty to inform. But we currently do not have a policy, a board policy or an AP that talks about what does that duty to inform authorities about child abuse look like? Who's ultimately responsible? How does it get reported? It's also a licensing requirement for our Child Development Center. So I believe that they follow mandatory reporting requirements as part of their licensure as a children's center. But the problem is the board and the college don't have a policy that directs that policy. So this is having us come into compliance with state law.
So let me rephrase my question. So what is the policy going to say? PCC, blah, 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 because I'm not seeing it here. I'm seeing that we are going to develop a procedure, but what is the board saying as to this is what the board of trustee, is this something the board trustee have to do? Maybe I'm missing.
No, the board just has to direct me, which is what this policy does, directs me to create the AP.
Okay,
The
okay,
board doesn't create the AP.
thank you.
This
That-
policy directs me to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And our last one is 7,600 police departments.
Last one.
And the reason my understanding from Dr. Bush is that we needed this is that in order to actually have a police department, we have to have a board policy that says we're going to have a police department. So we put the cart before the horse.
I was gonna say, haven't we had a police department for a long time?
Yeah,
So
but
we're-
we haven't had the right to have one.
But we were never authorized, so these guys have been under illegal employment.
No, I wouldn't say illegal.
I wouldn't
but
say
Okay.
Dr. Bush is making me follow all the laws.
I see, okay.
So what I was having a little problem on the, let's see, the third to the last paragraph. I need to know, it says here, the superintendent president shall ensure that every member of the police department first employed by the district before July 1st of 1995, blah, 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 99, blah, blah, blah. So what exactly, I didn't understand, what is it that's going to be done?
Well, what that refers to, if I'm not mistaken, and I can double check, is that there were new standards that were put in place for ongoing continuing education and certification for police officers in the state of California after July 1st, 1999. And specifically, I believe that every officer, every sworn officer in the state had to be post certified. And post is the police officer standard training. And every police officer, sheriff's deputy in the state has to be post certified. But post didn't really start the official certification until the late 90s. So what this says is if you started at Pasadena City College in 1998, before post certification was required in the state, it doesn't mean it doesn't mean that you don't have to be certified. You still need to meet all the post certifications.
So these folks that are not in compliance, what, they're going to develop something for them to train or what?
They already are in compliance. They're in compliance. It's not that we're trying to create compliance.
Oh, okay.
It's that the board has to articulate their expectation that all police officers that we hire who are sworn police officers, which means our police officers can arrest someone just like somebody in the LAPD or somebody in Pasadena City College, Pasadena Police Department. They are sworn officers. They can arrest somebody. They have to meet all of the California state requirements. Prior to this, police officers at a college or a university that were either hired by that institution or were not sworn didn't have to meet the post certification. This is, you have to be fully trained.
Okay.
This does is say the board says you must be fully trained. We are fully in compliance. We don't have a problem.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah. That's it.
That's the last one.
Crystal.
I thought we had another one.
we
Well,
do-
yeah, what about standard 4? I think there's a
Oh,
review. Yeah.
It's my last policy.
Oh, I see.
Crystal,
Yes.
please, I'm sorry. Could you go back to 3520? That's when my computer freezed up and I had a question on that.
Sure.
I was trying to, you got it?
Yep.
Okay, on the third paragraph from the top, It said the written agreements required by the policy shall be public record, blah, blah, blah. Where are these agreements going to be? If I was looking for them, where would I find them?
I think Chief Matchin would have them.
So, but it says that it's going to be, I'm hoping that it will be easily accessible, like on the website or something like that. That's what I was hoping to see.
Well, I don't know. I can certainly ask Chief Matchin. I do not know.
Yeah, because if we are going to, that would be my opinion and that would be my wish, that if we're going to have these open, these policies that says they're open, but you have to go through the chief to find them, which it's not going to be very, to me.
Actually, what it says in the full sentence is that they shall be public records, but they'll be made available for inspections upon request. So we do state here that you have to request them.
So why can't we have them on the website is my question.
I don't know. I don't have the
Is
answer.
it possible we could find out?
Sure.
I think that would be really good. That was my question. Okay, and that's it, I'm done.
Making a note, okay? Okay, the next thing on your agenda, Trustee Brown?
Yeah, my favorite part.
Which is, Trustee Brown has been gracious to serve on the Accreditation Standing Committee for us this last year. And I think he might have even been there as we were going through the ICER. And I wanted to provide you with a standard 4C, and let me just say it's not finished yet. We're still doing our summer editing on it. But I wanted to give you an idea of how we're addressing the narrative and the standards this year. I know Trustee Brown is very familiar that we were very, very focused on being evidence-based. So it's not an editorial. We address the standards. There's no musing. I wanted you, since standard 4C has to do with the governing board, I was hoping you would take a look at that. We'll bring you more pieces. You are going to get to see the entire document, but I just wanted you to see the road we were going down with this. And Trustee Brown is frozen again, so I don't know what to do.
Yeah, so I'm looking at my notes. So one of the things you talk about is a tour of all of the campuses, but it only names Foothill and Colorado. Let's see if I can see that. And then I'm sorry, I did want to ask something on 2210. I had it in my notes and I forgot to ask it. But anyway, let's finish this first.
So can you specifically tell me where you're referring to? And
yeah, let me find it here. Say it's 2210.
Which standard is it under, do you know?
So it's under 4C, but it talks about giving an orientation to the, okay, let me see, Foothill. Do a search here. Okay, here it is. So it's under, well, I don't know. Okay, doesn't.
C1, C2?
So it's evidence of meeting the standard.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of those. Is it under C1, C2?
All right, I have to now go back up and see where it is.
Oh, sorry.
C analysis C6, evidence of meeting standard. C7, okay, wait a minute. C7, C8, hang on, let me see. C9, it's under C9.
Got it. Okay, so, okay. And what specifically?
Okay, so under the second bullet point, the orientation of new board members by the president, blah, blah, blah. Within 2 months, Colorado campus and Foothill, but we have now Rosemead and John Muir.
Oh, yeah.
I think that we are actually quoting the board bylaw on this, so we will need to adjust the board bylaw before I can adjust this language. So let me bring 2740 back to you so we can adjust the language.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You know, darn, that was the other board policy thing I meant to ask. Okay, darn. Let me see.
So we can certainly, before this goes to final press, adjust board bylaw 2740 and then adjust the language in the standard.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that would be good.
Okay.
Um,
No
I had,
problem.
and I apologize. So Berlinda, I did have a question on board bylaw 2210 on the officers. It talks about, is it okay if I go back to that and ask the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So it talks about, is this the one that talks about the elections, the special elections?
No,
Is that the one?
this doesn't have elections in it. This is just about the roles of the different.
Or
officers.
2100 by.
Well,
Okay.
2100 is not on the agenda.
Nope.
Oh, it's not. Okay,
Oh.
then never mind. If it's not on the agenda, then never mind.
So if that's it, but if Linda, if you have a concern about 2100 board bylaw, we can make a note and go back and look at it. But you can't talk about it right now.
Sure can.
Yeah, I just don't know why. Gosh, that's so weird that maybe this was on a previous one that I looked at.
Okay.
You have had it recently for review. But it
Oh,
wasn't-
okay. All right. You know what? Let me go back and look at it, and then I'll forward it to Berlinda and Erica, and we'll see if it needs to go back up. I did have a couple of questions on that one and also on the search committees too. So I don't know why I was looking at that, but okay. Thank you.
So did you want to go to the search committee? Because it's on this one.
Is it on this? Okay,
Yes.
maybe that is where.
Wait a minute.
Yes.
Okay,
I
wait.
think it was
Maybe it was-
under the president evaluation. I had a question too. But before we go, I need to say something on that same area. In the area where we were talking about that Linda was referring to earlier, I like how it's all outlined of the mentoring process and the orientation and blah, blah, blah. But what I have been struggling with for a while, and I am hoping that we could maybe do something more formal to ensure that when I'm gone and Linda's gone and Erica is gone, the process is pretty formal. Meaning that if we could develop maybe
It's pretty cool. It requires a lot of build out.
let me see, a booklet or maybe just some what is it I want to call? Not a booklet, but maybe a questionnaire or something that as the new trustee come on board, they complete as the progress, as these stuff are being implemented and they meet them, they check it off. And then the next time we go to accreditation, we have evidence that yes, we did do this. Trustee Brown came and she did this. So that's what I would like to see, maybe that we could establish that as we move forward.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree. I agree with Berlinda. I think that would be great.
Well, and I think, so when it comes to this, I agree. And I think if we bring back board bylaw 2740 for our next meeting, we can talk about it in greater detail because we're kind of talking about something that's not on the agenda. But I do believe that for the purposes of this accreditation cycle, I think I will be able to work with Crystal to come up with some evidence that shows the orientation activities that I lined up for Trustee Silver. And the approach, it's not as formal as what's here, but I believe, you know, is what you're talking about, which we will talk about in a subsequent meeting. But I do believe we have evidence of at least what happened with one trustee's onboarding. And for the purposes of this accreditation cycle, we could go back and talk to Trustee Chen Lao and find out exactly what we did when it came to her onboarding for the college. I don't know what that was, obviously, because I'm not here. I wasn't here, but I do think we have some evidence for this to attach with Trustee Silver.
So let me just make sure that I'm not I am not saying that we want to go back to anything. I am
Right.
saying that if we could embrace
Mm-hmm.
this that we have here outlined and develop a format that we could move this as we move forward.
Yes.
What happened, se fue. It doesn't matter.
Right.
We want to have something in place.
And we
That's
can
all I'm
put
saying.
that, yep, and we'll put that in the board bylaw.
So I now know why I had a question on 20 on this board bylaw. So it is embedded in this accreditation standard 4C. So Berlinda, so were you done? Because I can see now why I asked this question. So if you do a search on evidence of being a standard, okay, let me see where this is. C9 again, it talks about board
Vacancy.
bylaw, yeah, the vacancies, it's unexpected vacant positions to be filled through special election.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's board bylaw 2110. Except we have filled vacancies not through special election but through appointment. So does that cover that? And I didn't go back and look at the bylaw, I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah, so I'm wondering whether or not we should do that, because I remember on our, well, obviously I was appointed, and I know the decision of the board at that time was not to go through the expense of a special election, but to do an appointment and then have that trustee run for, so as not to incur the expense of a special election. So I'm just
Right.
wondering if that covers that.
Yeah, I think we should go back and look at that board bylaw. Don't you think so, Crystal? We can bring that to the next.
Yes,
Let's
but I have to, it says special election, but special election doesn't necessarily mean public special election.
Okay, so as long as we make sure that that the board has the authority to elect to do an appointment if they can. I guess that's my only point, that we're covered, that they have that option to do both, because I can see it was like $500,000, I think, if the board had to go out and do a special election, which I think.
I'm not sure what you're talking about, Trustee Wall.
So under C9, they talk about 2100, and then they specifically go to 2110, and they talk about the board filling vacancies through a special election. So I just wanted to make sure that the bylaw also covered the board has the authority not just to do it through special election, but also through an appointment process, right?
And I'm actually looking at that bylaw now, and it says that. It says within 60 days of the vacancy or filing of a deferred resignation, the board shall either order an election or make a provisional appointment to fill the vacancy.
So
And
does that wording, should that wording be reflected in 4C then also, or it doesn't have to be?
It can be. It just says that we have a procedure for doing it. We have a board bylaw in place for doing it. But I can say through a special election or through a provisional appointment.
Yeah.
You can call it out.
Okay.
And I apologize that I didn't look at this. So I should have brought this under board bylaw 2431, I think, evaluating. So it's under standard C3, standard 4 C3. So this is an issue that I had on the last time, and I had hoped that we could bring this back to the board sometime before we actually have to do an evaluation, or not an evaluation, but sometimes before we have to replace Erica, if Erica ever decides to leave us, which I hope is never. But if that should happen for some reason, she and Martha decide they're going to run off somewhere, she doesn't want to work with the college. I just, so here's the issue. I know that we agreed that when we did the search committee, Raj felt pressured from the faculty that they complained that there were too many community members. So we said that, okay, our community members, not all 7 would participate in the search level 2. They would only do search level 1, but then we whittle it down to 3. I think that caused difficulties, and I don't think that our communities were well represented. So Trustee Brown, at some point, I would really like us to revisit that board bylaw and make a change so that all of our designated community members move on to search level 2 before. So I just don't know what the right timing is. I didn't want to do it right after we did Erica, because then that signals and flags the faculty that we were unhappy.
It's not.
I personally would definitely have to talk with you offline, Linda, because I didn't have any problem with my area. And I don't think most of the other trustees didn't have any problem. So we should do that offline first before we drag everybody in here to see what are the issues.
Okay, well, you didn't have a problem because your trustee, your appointee moved on to search level 2, but the rest of us, our appointees didn't.
Well, let's talk about it, okay?
Okay.
And back to standard 4C.
Yeah.
Well, that-
Well,
So this is under standard 4C, and that's the reason I wanted to call that out.
I'm glad you did, Linda. That's the one I wanted. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Dealing with the last search, we went through a process, and it was a good process when the academic senate head came to us and wanted some policies dealing with the search, and we worked together, and it was a good policy. And I think you and I talked during the last search, because many people thought in the college and outside that we only were privy to look at what that committee brought to us. Many people thought that these are what people recommended, and that's all the board could look at, but that is not correct. And we've got to do something to clarify that, because the board has the right to go back and take people that they didn't bring.
Oh my God.
Okay, you know what, folks? We're getting into a conversation about a board bylaw that is not on the agenda. So we go back to 4C, and it sounds to me, Trustee Fellow, like you think we should have a conversation about this. So I will look to Berlinda to advise Crystal and me about when that board bylaw should go on the agenda for policy. Happy to have a conversation.
I read it last night.
We can't talk about this right now. We have to just focus
Okay.
on.
Thank you.
I'm going to say this needs to be sooner than it was scheduled, because we just passed that board bylaw recently, before or right after we hired Erica. So just less than 2 years ago. But I think that at some point we need to revisit that.
Yeah, we will look to Berlinda to make that recommendation.
I am so happy.
Okay,
Yeah.
back to 4C.
Any other things you'd like to talk on?
Those are the only 2 bylaws that got mentioned under 4C that I was concerned about.
I think you all did a great job with this, Crystal.
Thanks. I just want to be really clear that we were in, Trustee Brown knows this, we were very, very focused on addressing the standard and providing appropriate evidence to address the standard and not going outside of that.
Yes, you did. We all did. So is that it?
That's it. That's all that I have on the agenda.
Okay, so any other questions other than the others we just talked about?
And then the next thing is the next meeting schedule. Now, Crystal, we have some more policies coming forward, correct?
We have more bylaws to get through. So
Okay.
it would be, if the board so chooses to bring back the 3 they discussed today, we could do that for the next meeting. But I'm going through your bylaws right now to get you all of those up to date.
So maybe in August, another meeting in August, folks?
Sounds good.
Sure.
Let's not do that 1 o'clock because my machine, I don't know what happens on Fridays. I just freeze and freeze and freeze.
And then
No,
at that meeting in August, we will also talk about, we will review the process by which policies and board laws come to you and the order of review, so that you all can have a conversation about the timeline and the steps and see if there's something that you want to change to that in order to cut down on the times when you feel like you're getting something after the fact that then needs to go for approval by the full board.
That's very good, Erica. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, so if we have no other questions or thoughts, we will consider this meeting adjourned.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.